Sehr geehrter Herr Bundesminister, lieber
Minister,
Peter Altmaier,
dear
meine
Peter
sehr
Altmaier,
verehrten Damen und Herren
ladies and gentlemen, members of the German Parliament,
geehrter Herr Staatsminister Ahnen,
State Minister
sehr
Ahnen,
geehrter Herr Vizepräsident
Vice
der
President of the European Commission,
Kommission, lieber Herr
Mr.
Šefčovič,
Sefcovic,
sehr geehrter Herr Amin,
Mr.
sehr
Amin,
geehrter Herr
Mr.
Birol,
Birol,
sehr geehrte Frau
Ms.
Kulumbagi,
Bakulubangi Wamala,
meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste,
ladies and gentlemen, guests,
herzlich willkommen
welcome to the Federal Foreign Office here in Berlin. Welcome to the fourth Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. I'm really delighted, and it's so nice to look into this lovely Weltsaal. It's good to see so many important people in positions of responsibility who have come here today to talk about a major global issue, the global energy transition, and how to progress it. Now, the fact that there are many reasons why it's so important, and we have come together for the fourth time for this Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, and that shows that the global energy transition is actually happening. The first steps have been taken, and there is a global trend towards sustainable energy supply, and we want to boost that trend. But the energy transition won't just happen on its own. And we don't have an unlimited amount of time. All around the world, including here in Germany, this major change is creating major challenges for us. And we want to tackle these challenges together. And that's why we've come here today. Going it alone in individual countries or confrontation won't help us. We are convinced that we are facing global tasks, and we need to find global common responses to these global challenges. And we want to take the partnership-based approach of multilateralism. The international community has committed to the Paris Agreement and to the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm convinced that if we fail to implement Agenda 2030, then we will soon find ourselves confronted with a world with much greater risks to our stability and to peace. Germany is resolved to attain the Sustainable Development Goals, and that is why we are working very hard to make progress on the energy transition here. And that is why we are advocates of international energy and climate dialogue. The energy transition is not just sufficient, but it's certainly a necessary condition for a stable and peaceful world. Ladies and gentlemen, in this context, let me take two recent encounters I've had to illustrate to you what that means and where it becomes particularly obvious. At the end of March, I was in New York and I met with ambassadors from the small Pacific and Caribbean island states. We all know that these countries are particularly hard hit by climate change and specifically by extreme weather events and the rise in the sea level. And this threat to their lives is creating great insecurity and also to migratory movements due to the effects of the climate. And this encounter made it very clear to me, once again, just how important it is to do our work here as well as we can. And therefore, I agreed with the island states in New York that we should take a specific step, that we should have a group of friends at the United Nations which would focus more on climate and security at the UN and to anchor this in the UN agenda. Because that's where we need to discuss this. We need to get the interconnection between climate and security on the international agenda in order to avert crises and threats to peace before they become acute. And that is also the way we understand a preventive foreign policy. Germany is, I think you'll know, currently applying for a non-permanent seat on the Security Council of the United Nations. And this issue, this connection between climate change, fragility, stability and security is something we want to place right on the center of the agenda. And therefore, I would be grateful if you would support that. Ladies and gentlemen, a second encounter I want to tell you about is when I was in Jordan a few days ago. Jordan is an important partner for us for stability and reconciliation in a restless region. And compared with its own size, Jordan has become host to very many refugees. And I visited a project supported by Germany there. This is providing a refugee camp with solar power on a distributed basis. And this innovative use of solar energy ensures that a group of people have access to electricity who otherwise would not have any access to the grid and therefore would not be able to fulfill many of their fundamental needs. I think this sort of project is a very good example of the possibilities that renewable energies can create for us. Jordan can also serve as an example in another way. It imports a large proportion of its energy and spends a lot of money on doing so. But it has a great potential for renewable energy, and in this case, of course, solar energy in particular. And the country has already made some good progress on expanding renewable energy, and I think that the prospects are fascinating that a country like Jordan will be able to generate its own electricity in its own country. It's going to be able to create training, it's going to create jobs in renewable energy, it's going to build up domestic value chains and thus help to reach its own development goals. And maybe in future it will even be able to export solar power and thus build up cooperation which will help to secure peace with the neighbors in the region. And that is also what this conference is about. It's about these concepts for a future which is less dependent on finite resources and on new forms of cross-border cooperation. Those are the issues we need to talk about here. Ladies and gentlemen, renewable energy is rich in quantity, it's available virtually everywhere. And that changes the foreign policy relations between countries. The use of renewables reduces dependency on energy, and it reduces the possibility to misuse energy as a means of power and a means of imposing pressure. And we believe that cooperation on energy policy is a platform for dialogue, for cooperation, and for international dialogue. And that is what we want to do here today. I'm therefore very glad that we have the Vice President of the European Commission here with us, Maros Šefčovič. We also have Adnan Amin, the Director General of IRENA, and then we have the Executive Director of the IEA, Fatih Birol, and welcome, gentlemen. Your institutions are an example of how the new energy diplomacy can work. The energy transition will have an impact on the international order, and we can't imagine what those effects will be yet. They will quite simply change the geopolitical realities, and therefore we have we've worked with Norway and the United Arab Emirates to set up a global commission on the geopolitical impact of the energy transition under the umbrella of IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. And the first session of this high-level commission will be taking place here in Berlin right after this conference. And I'm already looking forward to hearing the results. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been achieved in recent years on the road towards a sustainable energy supply and a cooperation-based energy policy all around the world. We have thus put the first milestones in place for combating climate change, for prosperity and for security of supply. And we don't want to rest on our laurels. We don't want to leave it at that. In many cases, countries' energy mixes include oil, coal and gas, and we need to work further on this transition. There are a lot of tasks to sort out on the way to completing the global energy transition, both in Germany and all around the world. We want to contribute to the solution of these challenges as a reliable partner, and we want to make a contribution towards that today at this conference. I hope that you have exciting and successful discussions on your road, on our road to a global energy transition. Welcome again, and thank you very much for coming.
Just one question, if I may, Mr. Foreign Minister, just one question, because this term, Energiewende, energy transition, Energiewende is used around the world now, because if I talk to an English-speaking audience, I really don't have to translate it anymore. And still, it is a term made in Germany. And my question would be, as Foreign Minister, how would you like to roll out this vision into the world through foreign affairs? Well, we'll do this by showing that climate change, but also the energy transition, is linked to stability and security. Climate change, there are lots of prognoses that show that climate change will cause migrational waves around the world to an extent that we cannot imagine today. And if you want to prevent this, then you need prospects, and you also need a vision for the energy transition. So I've tried to show this by using the example of Jordan. How can we make sure that countries can organize their energy supply in an autonomous way and do not become too dependent on other countries? Because this exerts a lot of pressure on them if there are power hierarchies in their region. This is why Germany wants to help them and provide the technology options that we have and make a contribution to this, because if you get these things right and if you do it as a multinational project, then this will not only help improve stability in many regions around the world, it will also make a contribution to help many regions around the world acquire more prosperity. So this is sort of a win-win situation. This is why we've made this a priority as Germany to make a contribution to this. And we wish you a lot of success in doing so. Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister. Thank you.